Good morning. Coming to you from my front porch today. I wanted to talk a little bit about different subjects today, including the protests that are going on and then the influences of political science. The person who's assisting me today is my daughter Grace. Say hello, Grace.
Hello.
There you go. I don't know if we need much assistance today or not, but anyway, she's here. And so, first thing I also wanted to just cover, yesterday I was just introducing the syllabus, but today I also wanted to cover a little bit about my background. Many of you discovered and correctly pointed out that I live in Glen Ellen. Thanks for doing that, researching, figuring that out. And then I've got my wife, who you heard from yesterday, and then Grace, who's a sophomore at Loyola, and then my son Joe, who's a junior at Glenbard West. And then as far as my background goes, I went to Western Illinois University. I got my bachelor's in political science, and then I went to Oklahoma State University for my master's in political science. While I was at Oklahoma State, I started teaching political science classes and then continued on off and on throughout the years. Right after college, I also worked at a place called Addison Township. And at Addison Township, I was a caseworker where I was sort of helping people along with the problems that they were having. Maybe they couldn't pay their bills, and we would try to help them out with things like that. After that, I went to work at Illinois Institute of Technology. There I was running basically their grants and contracts research area, trying to help professors get grants and contracts. Then after that, I moved on at Illinois Institute of Technology. I took over their continuing education department, and there I did computer training. I was the manager of the computer training area. You can tell quickly that I'm not very good at computers, so I was just the manager. And then I also was running their international training program. And then about 10 years ago, I started teaching at College at DuPage. And then just for your information, I also teach at Joliet Junior College and the city colleges too. And so that's a little bit about my background. You'll be hearing a lot more things as we go forward. Things like in college, I was also a good humor truck driver, so I'm a little bit familiar with business. And then on the side, for many years, I had run this company called Global Education Association, where I brought students from foreign countries to do internships in Chicago. But of course, this summer, that company isn't doing anything. And so I'm glad to be teaching, glad to have you guys in the class. So some of the other things I wanted to talk about today was protests, and of course we know what's going on throughout the country, how horrible things have been, as far as certainly upsetting about what happened to George Floyd, and then all the protests that are taking place. I wanted to talk about a protest that I had sort of been to in some ways. It was at Riot Fest a couple of years ago, and I'm going to post the video of this band called Pussy Riot that was doing a show there, and at the same time they had like protests on the stage and protests in the audience, and they were protesting. What had happened was that band Pussy Riot is actually originally from Russia, and a member of their band had been poisoned by the Russian government. And so they had sort of stopped in the middle of one of the songs, and they started talking about the oppression within Russia, but then also oppression throughout the world, and also talked a little bit about how there's disparities economically throughout the world. And so it was kind of an interesting protest, of course, still at the same time you're there listening to music. And so I'll post what I saw when I was at that concert, when I also post this video, so it'll be like just below there. Okay, so let's see if you can see what I've got here. Influences of political science, and then you can see Aristotle, and this will be on our test. Aristotle is considered the father of political science, and so Aristotle said that there's a lot of different contributing factors when you think about political science. Like, for instance, what's going on with economics is going to be a contributing factor. Thinking about history, thinking about psychology, thinking about sociology, geography. And so I wanted to sort of take each one of those individually, and today I'm going to focus on economics, and you'll be able to see like the video and some of the discussions that I have on economics when you open up Module 1. And so Aristotle said to take a look at all these things. Another person that I wanted to talk about was Lazarus, in that he said political science is also the study of who gets what. And so who gets what, thinking of, what government contracts do you get? What government support do you get? What government support don't you get? And so certainly who gets what's going to be a consideration for what's going on in government. And then my side of it, adding to what Laswell said, not only who gets what, but who pays for what taxes are paying for it. Does anybody want to see their taxes go up? And so then the first one I've got listed here is economics. And I'm going to talk a lot about economics in this class because it's going to be coming up over and over, especially talking about the pandemic. What are we going to do to keep the economy moving? And some of the things that we've already heard about, like the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, which was basically a $1 trillion program to try to keep people working during the pandemic. Another one was the stimulus. Did anybody get a check from the government for $1,200 because they wanted to have people have money in their pockets so they can continue to spend so the economy would still be moving along? And if you watch what's going on in the stock market, there was a 38% drop, and now it's basically come back to be only down 8 or 9%, even 5% for the NASDAQ. And so that certainly has been able to help sort of support the economy as far as some of those things go. Now, long term, is it going to be enough? Are we going to have enough money in the system so that it's going to last long enough for people to continue to spend, and we're not going to have the massive job losses? And of course, we know the job losses were created because of the pandemic, but will those jobs come back? And so that's an issue that the government needs to look at. And when you're talking about government spending, that falls under an area called fiscal policy. On the other side, you also have what's called monetary policy, which is handled by the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is going to deal with money supply to make sure that there's enough money in our system, and then they're also going to deal with interest rates. And so this is one of the questions that I had for extra credit today. Yesterday was, what town do I live in? The extra credit question today is, what's the interest rate that the federal government pays on its 10-year bond? And so you have to look it up and see what's the interest rate that the federal government pays on its 10-year bond. And you can see that I've got my phone number here, 630-234-8747, that you can text me to or email me at nwritew@cod.edu. And what I wanted to do was ask you that because it's kind of important to know what's going on with interest rates, and is that going to somehow or another impact the economy. The other thing that I've got listed here is the 30-year, and I'm talking about the 30-year mortgage. So what's the interest rate that they're paying on the 30-year mortgage? If you can email me or text me that, then we'll have extra credit for that, and then we can talk a little bit more about that in the future. But for sure, the idea of economics and the government supporting the economy during certain times is really important to what's taking place in political science. Because think back to 2008, 2009. In 2008, 2009, we had a terrible economic recession, and the government stepped in to try to help things. But they stepped in a little bit late, and so things fell faster than you would have liked to see them. And so did that change the way that people voted? Were people going to be more likely to vote for Republicans because George Bush had been president, or more likely to be voting for a Democrat like Barack Obama, who said, we're going to make changes, we're going to do something to help the average person? And so does that impact what's going on in government? And of course, for sure, if people are losing their jobs, if people aren't feeling good about what's going on in the economy, they will change and look to a new direction for leadership and maybe vote for another party. And when you're talking about voting, you're only talking about 4 or 5% of the people that can really influence it. So think about the economic impact, and then text me or email me what the 10-year U.S. Treasury bond pays in interest, and then what does the 30-year mortgages interest cost for individuals? So you're getting a mortgage, what is the interest that you have to pay on that mortgage? And that will give us an indication of sort of like where things are in the economy right now. Okay, that's the update for now. Tomorrow I'm going to be doing history and probably psychology. And so take a look at Module 1 and then I'll check in tomorrow.